I want to make a shrink pot. If you never heard about a shrink pot, you're not alone. Until a week ago, I haven't heard about it, but really wanted to make one after learning what it is. Basically, it's a pot carved from a green log that leverages the wood shrinking process to tightly hold the bottom in place. I started with drilling out a few through holes with my auger bits. It didn't go too well, I suspect because the wood was too wet and I was going in the end grain. Next is simply a long and a bit tedious part of removing material with chisel and gouges to get some reasonably small widths of the pot walls. Ideally, this task requires an in-canal gouge, in other words, a gouge that has a bevel on the inside and flat back. Unfortunately, I don't have that, so I was using an out canal ones. They require a bit of finesse and holding at an angle, but it worked out okay for this not so deep pot. After done with the hollowing, time to make a slot for the bottom. This slot is basically to ensure that when pot walls shrink, they secure the bottom in the slot and prevent walls from cracking. I think there are tons of ways and tool options to make such a slot. I don't have any specialized tools, so I just used the marking gauge to define walls of the slot and then followed with the knife to mark the angled groove and then finished with whatever knives I had to remove the waste. Next is to make the bottom. I just used the pencil to transfer these grooved shapes to the bottom to a small piece of wood and then use my coping saw to cut out as close to the line as possible and the rest tried to refine with a knife. Next I needed a bit of the chamfer on the bottom so its width matches the groove. I think this is another mistake I made as I didn't really measure everything but basically did by eye. Now, the final mistake time. So the theory is that the bottom should be made very closely matching to the inside of the pot so it can slid to the slot, and then after pot dries the bottom will get tightly and stuck in the slot. I was a bit impatient with my fitting skills and tried to use a bit of too much force to slid it inside. Well, the wood didn't like that. As I don't have other green logs of similar size right now, I was really upset, but decided to do a little bit cheating and fix it with a little bit of glue and clamps. Now hopefully it will hold up to the shrinking process, and as soon as I find a comparable log I will make another one, hopefully without cracking. Again, this is a really cool project and I hope you liked it. And what can you shrink in a shrink pot?